Hey, you're watching What Was That About? Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. I hope you're doing well. My name is Moses Khan. I am with Dr. Tony Saldana, who's the lead pastor here at All People's Church. How you doing, Pastor?
Hey, how
Doing
are
well?
you?
I'm doing good.
You're very casual today.
I am.
Very,
Wearing a hoodie.
yeah, Adidas. Very.
You know what? I brought a change of clothes, but we're cutting it close to recording time, and so I figured I'd just
Go with what you had.
roll with it. Sometimes you got to roll with it.
Got to roll with it.
Hey, listen, we want to talk about what's going on there in the Middle East. We've done, I think, 2 episodes on that already. But you asked an interesting question, Pastor, and I think we want to delve into this, really, the reality of the human heart in light of everything that we see. And I don't know if you've been on social media or on TikTok. People are obviously, wearing this very personally. And so the question you asked was, can hatred be regulated? Can hatred be regulated? Yeah.
Yeah, Pastor Moses, I've been watching the events, not only in the Middle East, but the spillover into the world. Even in Western civilization, we had a shooting in Vermont just this past week, where 3 Palestinian students were shot.
Yeah.
And, there is a lot of hatred. It seems like this war has really exposed a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, a lot of things that were beneath the surface that have now come up, if you will. This was like the catalyst that brought these things out, and hearts are being exposed.
Yeah.
And the vile hatred that is in people. So then, because I think particularly in the West, they actually know, the powers that be, governments, what have you, they actually know the level of hatred that is present. And so they make statements like this, well, hatred will not be tolerated. And they pass all kinds of laws and regulations and what have you. But here is the question. Can you just say this will not be tolerated, and what you're just going to suddenly regulate the human heart and its ability to be filled with such toxicity, such as hatred? Right.
Yeah. And I think there's so many things that are happening right now that we can say is continuously causing this. I mean, even the language people use on media, on social media, the language people use it's such language that you're not detached from the situation to see it objectively.
Right.
It's the kind of language that makes it very personal. It's us versus them language. It's you're like this and we're like this language.
Right.
And so when you have that, then you get into the human heart and everything that is within it, so people aren't able to see a situation objectively or even to have a conversation objectively. It's very passionate, it's very hatred. And then obviously when people don't know what to do with all these emotions that overflow, then they begin to do things that are violent or chaotic and the rest of it.
Yeah. Now, particularly on the side of the extremists where you have pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian that are calling for the annihilation of the entire Jewish population and the entire land.
Yeah.
I mean, that is hatred at its absolute fullest, know. And anybody that can mutilate, rape, murder, what have you, and then think they're going to some kind of eternal reward. By the way, I noticed they don't really promote the 72 virgins anymore. We don't hear too much about that. It's not. I guess it doesn't really go well in social circles.
That's right.
But I'm sure secretly it must still be a perk, if you will. But the amount of vileness that is coming out from people, so much so, like I know, for example, there were protests in England, and in England they were threatening to arrest people that used particular language. And by the way, sometimes they code the language, like from the river to the sea. Really, it kind of sounds like, oh, okay, it's some kind of slogan. No, it's really annihilation. It's really about hatred.
Wow.
But then when it begins to spill over, even to people that are not even connected personally, then all of a sudden you have threats and violence And people are like third part. It's like almost like third party offense. The
Offenses,
Bible
yeah.
talks about third party offense. So people take offense, and they're not even part of it, because this thing is much like COVID. Much like COVID. You remember COVID? You had to take sides.
Yeah.
What side are you on?
side are you on, yeah.
And even here now, this is becoming which side are you on? And really, it's not just a war. I think it's a worldwide redefinition of values,
Wow.
of hatred. They love to talk about tolerance. We don't see a lot of tolerance there. We don't see a lot of political correctness.
Right.
And let me just say this too. We really love to superimpose our Western ideas into this Middle East conflict, which, by the way, just does not work.
Yeah.
But the spillover and the thing that it ignites in people's heart, particularly in these areas of hatred and violence, I think are phenomenal. What we are watching is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there needs to be some level of realization that, I think for us that we can take moments like this to go, hey, see, this is actually what the Bible talks about in terms of how deceptive and how evil and how wicked the heart really is. And, Jesus talks about it in Mark 7, where he talks about all these evil things that you see in the world are a result of the evil that's within the human heart.
Right.
Right. And so I think we on this side, on North American side, we are just as capable of what is taking place in the Middle East. Only we manifest it in very different ways. We use language. We tear people down. We discriminate. We go pick a side. And by the way, this is the correct side. And if you're not on this side, then we're going to ostracize you. And so we're doing the very, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I think people need to realize that what is happening there is a result of the human heart. And we're doing the very same thing on this side.
And ultimately, we serve the God of love. So we're talking North American, Western society, but we come also from a kingdom of God side of things, where God wants to get into the heart, to change the heart. So the answer to the question is no. No, you cannot regulate the human heart.
That's right.
You cannot tell it, you will not hate.
Right.
Now, people may comply.
Sure.
And they don't want to be vilified on social media and everywhere else or go to prison. But the reality is it's there.
Yeah.
And this is what we are seeing, that it is there. Now, people then try to justify their hatred. They try to justify their behaviors. And so in order to make themselves feel good and have other people, here again, come on their side. Because, it's not only a war of bullets. It's a war of marketing. It's a war of information. Who can convince the other side, or who can convince the neutral people of who is right?
Right.
And so what's interesting is, despite the massacre that occurred, the pro-Hamas Palestinian on TikTok, I don't know about everywhere else, but I think TikTok and Instagram, I think it's like 4-1. 4-1. Pro-Palestinian Hamas versus pro-Israel.
For sure.
And yet they were the perpetrators.
Right.
They were the ones that started the war, created the war, and then they want to play the victim because they want to win the war of information. And you know what? And I'm not saying that there's not hatred on the Israeli side, if you will.
Right.
But to me, that's almost like their response is revenge, right? Which can also be motivated by hate, although there I think there's also security involved in it, versus we're just going to massacre you in your bed. We're going to take hostages. We're going to take babies. I found out today that there's still a 10-month-old baby that is a hostage.
Jeez.
Like, if that's not the epitome of hatred, or even in releasing some hostages, which thank God for that, but you release some family members, but not others. Like, that's just torture. That is psychological torture. That's what? It is rooted in hatred. And what we are seeing is the ability of what the human heart can produce. Now, remember, what's the thinking of mankind? That mankind is good. And you know what? We have a few bad apples in there, right? Here's what God says. That the heart is evil, it's desperately wicked, you can't even know it, and you need to be regenerated.
Yeah.
You need to be redeemed.
That's right.
You need to be transformed
Yep.
by the power of God because the human heart cannot be regulated.
That's right. That's right. And that's what I love about the gospel. That's what I love about the story of Jesus is Jesus is not trying to force people into, just behavior modification. He wants to transform the heart.
Right.
And so that's the reality. The reality is we are seeing a people group or a religion, that is fixated on the idea that, no, we will make you, conform. Whereas you have Jesus who actually extends an invitation.
Right.
You know what I mean? For you to actually see the wickedness in your own heart and to see his goodness and to see him as the only way that can transform you.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of Jesus. It's almost as if, and this is what I love about Jesus as well. Like he asks questions so that you come to the answer yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think part of what people need to do as they look at what's happening is ask these kinds of questions. Hey, what does this tell us about the human heart? And obviously it reveals, darkness. And then who actually has the hope?
Yeah.
Who actually has the answer?
Yeah. And as you were speaking, I thought about, what we're seeing in our streets. These aren't militants. These are people that work with you.
Yeah.
They go to school with you.
Right.
They're in your league.
Yeah.
They're in your league games, right?
Yep.
They are in your supermarkets, and then all of a sudden you put them all together, and this venom comes out of them. These aren't. This isn't guerrilla warfare in the sense of, hey, we just took these military guys. No, these are everyday people that turn into something very, very different on a Saturday or when it is they decide to protest, whatever. And then they go to work on Monday.
Yeah.
And then they come back the next week and you kind of go like, what just happened here? And by the way, they don't have an answer for their own anger.
That's right.
They don't have an answer for their own rage. They don't have an answer for their own hatred other than they're justified in their victimization. Yeah. They get to go out on the streets. They spew evil. Honestly, they should probably be arrested for some of the things they are saying. And they have no answer. But the truth is, the gospel has an answer.
That's it.
God has an answer and a remedy for the condition of the human heart.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
So good. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you for joining us for today's episode. I know in the midst of the darkness and the chaos that is happening, hopefully you caught the tail end of this episode and the good news that is available in Jesus. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, like this video, share it, and comment below your thoughts and what you think of what is happening and the human heart that is being exposed and revealed with everything taking place around the world. Pastor, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you. We will see you next time.